Isn't it great to be in the house of God on a Sunday morning? And it used to be I had to go to church, and then it got to be where I get to go to church, because there's certain places in this world where we could get killed for doing what we're doing here today. And now I'm at the point where I need to go to church, because there is a battle going out there. I need to go to church to get built up and go into the battle and get beat down and get built up at church and get built up, and I just need to keep doing that, because if there's a battle, God's truth versus Satan's lies in almost every area of life. And there's people out there that think they're God, right? And I'll show you one of them. This is Yuval Harari. You go into ynharari.com, and this is what you see. It says, history began when humans invented gods and will end when humans become gods. And so that's the mindset. When you reject God, the Creator, this is where you can end up. And so they have a lot of power, and so what I'm trying to do, and ground zero for that battle is creation versus evolution. So I'm trying to get as many people to believe that creation is true. And Walt Brown says if a vast number of people realize we've been misled, then we can have an intellectual or a scientific revolution. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to change the academia. I'm trying to get the people to see that, hey, what they're teaching us is false. And the reason I'm here is because Pete flew me down to give a talk Thursday night at the Greater Houston Creation Association. And so that was quite an honor, and I get to give my favorite talk. It's the hydroplate. And I don't know if you've ever wondered why the moon is pounded on the near side. We only see one side of the moon, right? And the near side of the moon is pounded. It's got more lava flows and more moonquakes. It's got high density impacts there, and also a lot of density there. And that's counterintuitive because the Earth protects the near side of the moon. So why in the world would the near side be pounded and the far side pepper? The far side should be pounded, right? But it's not. So come Thursday night and you'll be able to explain why that's the case. And there was actually an email that somebody gave me and said, she'd been praying for her best friend and she was hoping that Christian men would come into his life and talk to him, and I happened to talk to him. And she said, I think you made an impact because he sent me one of your videos. And I got 100 videos out there. It's like, well, thanks for the encouraging words, but what video did he send you? And it was probably my worst audio tape video, because I gave a talk at the Rotary Club. I had 20 minutes, so I told them about the hydroplate. And it was during COVID, so the doors are open, and there's a lot of background noise. And so it made me realize it's not the quality of the video that matters, it's the content of the video. And so I encourage you to go into there. We've got, we're doing Creation Science 101 at our public library. And so we're giving the basics. This isn't science versus religion. This is science based on a view of history that acknowledges God versus science based on another view of history that doesn't acknowledge God. So basically you got faith on this one. You put your faith in blind chance and random collisions of atoms. That's the Big Bang and evolution. And it's like this building. Did it get put together by blind chance? It's like, no way. There's no way. And yet we're supposed to think our bodies got put together by blind chance? No, there's the one that makes the most sense is creation. Okay, so let's dive in real quickly here. The topic today is reaching college students. So let's start with the basics. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Who thinks chicken? Who thinks egg? Who doesn't know? Let's try it again. Chicken, egg, don't know. Okay, well, don't feel bad. I was 32. I couldn't answer. Until I was 32, I didn't know the answer to that. And then I heard a guy say, God said he made the birds, not the eggs, so the chicken came first. And I thought, well, who am I to argue with God? And then a couple of years ago, I heard somebody say, God made the chicken with the eggs inside of it. And it just took time for the eggs to come out. And that's a true statement, true. Okay, how about this one? When did dinosaurs live? Who thinks millions? Who thinks thousands? Who doesn't know? Okay. Well, I asked that at a Christian event. It was like a mini state fair. Business owners at St. Cloud. I had a table there. I might show you that. And 81 people, mainly Christians there, thought millions. And it was only 51 that thought thousands. So we're doing a very poor job of explaining what a biblical interpretation of dinosaurs is. And I was at a community college one time, and a woman said that her daughter was going through confirmation, and she asked the priest about dinosaurs, and he didn't give her a good answer. So she concluded that either Adam and Eve are false or dinosaurs are false. And I said, Adam and Eve are true, and dinosaurs are true. The thing that's false is millions of years. Separate that, and I plugged her into my dinosaur talk. And yeah, millions of years. And so that's, yeah. And so here's a biblical interpretation of dinosaurs. They're made on day 6 with all the other land animals. 2 of every kind of dinosaur got on the ark. They were young ones, so they could still fit in the door. And then all the other dinosaurs they died outside the ark, and a lot of them turned into fossils. And then after the flood, the dinosaurs got off the ark. People called them dragons, and because dinosaur hadn't been invented then, that coined dragons, and people killed them and carved them in castles and temples and cave walls and canyons, and they're all everywhere. And Mike Snavely, he went to, where was it? Or he called him up, and he knew that there was a dinosaur carved into the wall there at, it wasn't Arches National Park, it was a different one, like Canyon something monument. And he called him up and said, when's the best time to take a picture of this artifact? And the receptionist won't tell her. She says, you got to talk to the lead ranger. So he's talking to the lead ranger, and the lead ranger says, what did he say? The best time to take, he just blurts it out, the best time to take a picture of that artifact is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at that time of year. And then he said, I've exceeded my authority. And he goes, what? What does that mean? He said, well, that's a level 3 artifact. Level 1 is what we tell people about, or what we tell people about. Level 2 is what we'll tell about if they know about it. And level 3, he said, we have to imagine don't exist. So they are censoring the type of stuff that will point to evidence that man saw dinosaurs, because that blows the theory. Okay, so that's the basics. Why bother? Reaching the college students, why bother? This is interactive. Why would we want to reach college students? Or anybody for that matter? Why? This is audience participation here.
To encourage the younger generation.
Yeah.
Understand how everything works.
Yeah, encourage the younger generation to understand, absolutely, because a lot of kids they give up their faith. Ken Ham wrote that book, Already Gone, where 61% of Christian kids stop going to church when they're in their 20s. And they asked them, did a book already gone? Why is that happening? Because they doubt the Bible's true. And when did they start to doubt it? Junior high and high school, when they're being taught the Big Bang and evolution. So yeah, and then some of them fall away at college too. Any other reasons? No.
Colleges, they end up taking Jesus and God out of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. When I'm at St. Cloud State, kids will ask me, hey, what you doing here? And it's like, well, I just want to give you an opportunity to think. You got to see both sides if you want to think, and you're only getting one side in class. And so, yeah, so that they can, because they do take it out of there. Anybody else? Yes?
This is the age where your faith needs to become your own, because
right.
You're about to go off into the world to be a member of society. You need to hold that personal and not just claim it to be your church's faith or your friend's faith.
Yep, because your faith becomes your own in college, and yet there's nobody making them do anything. They can go whatever path they want, and you're right, they need to know why they believe it, not just what they believe. And they're going to get attacked in college, absolutely. Anybody else? How about so that they can put their faith in the Creator's Son and go to heaven? Because if they reject the Creator, what chance do they have of putting their faith in God's Son? And then also, how about because Jesus said so? Go into all the world and preach the gospel. And so what we need to do is get our why do we want to reach them big enough so we can get through the reasons why not to do it. They might scoff at us or mock at us or swear at us or whatever. Or pretty much they just ignore you. And that's okay too. But what's going to get us there? And I don't know if you know this or not, but St. Cloud State is not a Bible college. Okay, it is not even close. And when we started to reach out there, and you guys could do this here, our church started to rent a kiosk at the college. And then we do a survey. And during that survey, we would just ask them, what are their beliefs? Is there one God, many God? What's your spiritual background? How do you determine right and wrong? Stuff like that. And then there's a thing, how sure are you of going to heaven? And it's different percentages. And if they don't circle 100%, at the end of the survey, we say, well, we noticed you weren't 100% sure. And they said, what do you want to see from the Bible where you could be 100% sure? And then that gives us an opportunity to share the gospel. And it's an effective way to reach out to them. And what I do, just last week, I was at the college. That's my office. When I'm putting together these talks, I go to the college and I have a little sign, Jesus died for you, or do you believe in blind chance or God? And a student came up and we talked for over an hour. And I want to start a creation club there now. And so they can get both sides. And then the next day, somebody else came up and they talked for more than an hour. And so that's a lot of fun. And then I had a marketing genius who was coming to our church, and he designed this poster. Who's your daddy? Evolution, a Theory in Crises. Come and see what's being censored in your science class. Free admission. And guaranteed not to make a monkey out of you. And you could do that here because Pete could give some great talks at college. You've done some great talks, haven't you, Pete? Yeah, he's rare, yeah, and I want to get some of his slides. And so this was the very first talk I gave at St. Cloud State. I was scared to death. The Atheist Club was there, my pastor was there, and this student named Justin came up to me and he said, "Thank you for doing this, because I was beginning to doubt the Bible was true based on what I was learning in science." And then we did another one. So we'd rent the kiosks, we'd rent the classrooms, and then the Bill Nye Ken Ham thing came down the pike. You guys remember that at all? Yeah, this is 10 years ago. So we promoted it, again, renting the kiosks, and the kids showed up. We live streamed it, and we rented a classroom, and filled up every chair. Got every chair from the next classroom and filled it up. And if you notice, there's a monitor in the back. We got so many people watching. We got a couple people in the front watching the monitor in the back. And it got to the point where we were getting chairs from the lobby, and didn't even get them all in the room. And so that was a lot of fun. So there is interest. People want to see both sides, but it's really hard to get an evolutionist to step up to the microphone. So in that respect, I give Bill Nye a lot of credit, because he had the courage to stand up for his convictions. And he had to answer some uncomfortable questions. During Q&A, I think it was a 10-year-old, wrote the question, "Where did the matter for the Big Bang come from?" And "Don't know, it's a mystery," is what Bill Nye says. And Ken Ham says, "Well, Bill, there is a book that tells us where the matter came from." And then the next question to Bill was, "How did consciousness come from matter?" And then Bill Nye, "Don't know, it's a mystery." And Ken Ham, "There is a book that tells us where consciousness came from." And so it's all a belief system. And this is James. He's the guy that helped me cut my teeth. I followed his example because he got saved at St. Cloud State with an organization called Christian Soldiers. And he's just really bold and funny and quick. And yeah, I could tell you stories all about that. But there was one time I was sitting at the kiosk with him, and some professors were squawking at us. They didn't like what they were doing. They were making us know they didn't like what we were doing. And one of them said, "Well, this is a marketplace of ideas." And James slid the Bible across the table and said, "Yeah, and we're presenting our ideas." And that was profound on me. I realized right then that our ideas are just as valid as their ideas, and we don't have to back up or shut up for anybody. These are valid ideas. And when another thing that really helped me was I heard my pastor give a message called "When God's Desire Becomes Your Desire," and it's based on Matthew 9. I read it a lot. It basically was when Jesus looked at the multitudes and he was moved with compassion, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. You're scattered. And I thought something resonated in me, St. Cloud State. Somebody has to reach them. You know, they're getting scattered abroad, they're getting lied to, and they may end up in hell. And it's like, well, how do I reach them? And the first time I went there, I was terrified. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I went there with a bunch of tracts, and I was just handing them out. "You want some Bible verses on how to get to heaven? Want some Bible verses?" And then the professors say, "You can't do this here. You got to go by the hill." And it's like, there's no hill on campus. And so I just went until they didn't tell me that. And then pretty soon the kids say, "Hey, I got it already." And then I'd say, "Well, did you get your free gift?" And they said, "What free gift?" I said, "You got to read it. The free gift of eternal life that's bought and paid for by Jesus Christ. You have it. You know, if you were to die today, where would you go?" And so I'd ask them that. And I was there one time, and a street preacher came up and had a little stool. He got up on the stool and started preaching. And it wasn't long when somebody came out of Atwood, that's the main building for the students, with a clipboard. And the guy fills it out, and then the guy goes back in, and he comes out with a sign like this: "Free speech." And so it occurred to me that I might start having to do that. Because all the students, they got the card. Now what do you do? And so I went out and I just started preaching. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, you know, that's so must the Son of Man be lifted up. That's the crucifixion. That whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believes not is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the condemnation, that light is coming to the world. and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. So I would preach to them. And I'd do the Beatitudes sometimes too. And they could ignore that. You know, you can ignore words pretty easily. So sometimes I'd sing to them, you know, in Christ alone, or how deep the Father's love, or redeemed, or whatever. And a couple of times people put money in my box. It's like, well, that's not why I'm here, but yeah, that'll work. And then I was out there. It was a cold November day. And because I'd go whenever I got a day off, rain or shine, you know, I would just go. And a woman came up to me and she said, "I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee." It's like, that's great, but I don't drink coffee. And she said, "Well, how about cocoa?" And I said, "Sure, you can do that." Yeah. She said, "How about a pastry?" And I said, "Sure." And she got it to me, and then she left. It's like, I didn't expect that at all. At St. Cloud State, I was ready for the ridicule, the mocking, the F.U. Christian, the stick to the Bible, the throwing signs. I was ready for all that. I expected that, okay? And one time I was talking to a student here, and somebody's walking through Atwood. I'm at a kiosk at the time, and he's flipping me off with both fingers, you know. And I said, "Hey, God loves you too, man." And so the student turns around expecting to see a big smiley face, and he didn't see a big smiley face, and he turns back to me and says, "Boy, I didn't expect that." And I said, "Yeah, well, welcome to the party," you know. And so I was ready for that. But what I wasn't ready for is people being nice to me and encouraging me and buying me coffee or a mocha or orange juice. One guy bought me a chicken dinner, you know. And so what I realized was, yeah, Jesus attracts, but Jesus repels. I realized that, but he also attracts. And I look at it as he repels the people I really don't want to hang around with anyway, but he attracts some of the neatest people in the world. And I've met so many people, you know, and I'll show you my bike later on. But so we're renting out the kiosks, we're renting out the classrooms, and I wanted to get a student organization on campus so we can just check them out. And so we had Student Sunday. You know, we had Student Sunday where we invited all the students, the first Sunday of fall semester, where they're making friends, they're away from home for the first time. We want to make them sure they make good friends, because if they get in the wrong crowd, they're going to get flunk out by Christmas. They could. And so we invite the students to come to church, and then we'll feed you pizza. And then you can play sand volleyball the rest of the day. And it's the perfect court. Sand is in, grass is out. It was just so much fun. And they loved it so much. So throughout the years, we started playing volleyball after church on Sunday evenings. You know, because there's more daylight. And then this one guy, he'd just come on that night because he liked to play volleyball. Well, long story short, we got the 10 students, the 3 officers, the advisor, which was a trick, and then we got the Constitution approved. And then we could be in their organization, we could be in their group, you know, with all the other organizations. And the girl in the green there, she's April. She was our very first president. She's from Miramar. And yeah, she did a great job. And then we could be and this is in fall, the other one was in the winter. And then again, I asked them questions like that too. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And so then we don't have to rent the rooms anymore. We can just check them out. And this is the theater. I love giving talks at the theater. It's just the perfect place to give presentations. And then we started to show movies at the college. We'd show a creation movie every month. You know, and our tagline was, "Explore with open minds, not limited to theories of blind chance and random collisions of atoms." And so that's what we would do, and we'd have that poster up and flyers up anywhere. And if you do that, you might be thinking, well, how do you make a poster? I mean, this is the last poster I made. It's the one for our public library. Do you believe in blind chance or a creator? And we got those hanging up all around town and gas stations and wherever. And now some places on campus. But how do you make it? You go into canva.com. It's a really good software. And what I do is I do a custom design. If it's a poster, it's 30 by 20. Or if it's a big flyer, it's 17 by 11. And if it's another one, it could be 11 by 8.5. And so we make the one, where do you get the dolphin picture? You go into pixabay.com. This is where you get royalty-free images. And you can just type in whatever you want. Sunset, silhouette, whatever. Pixabay does it. Pexels.com does it. Unsplash.com does it. And then leading up to the resurrection one year, we had this up there. Big poster at St. Cloud State in Atwood, flyers all over the place. Remember Jesus. And every week before Resurrection Sunday, we'd show a movie about Jesus. You know, the case for a creator, the case for Christ, and then St. John in exile. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but you should. It's a one-man play. It's just a classic, and you'll never see the resurrection or the crucifixion the same again. He does that just wonderful. And then after, years of promoting our science things, which was fine, somebody complained about this poster and said you can only advertise events 2 weeks in advance. All year we'd been doing it, but now this one's a problem. They said you have to cover up those last 2. And so I covered up the last 2, and I put, where's your faith? God created you, or hydrogen and helium eventually turn into people? Because that's where their faith is. If you eliminate God, now you got to have hydrogen and helium turning into people, because that's what the Big Bang made. Hydrogen, helium, a little bit of lithium. Oh, and this is from St. John's in Exile. That's in the theater. He's just acting it out. Dean Jones, phenomenal. I think you can see it on YouTube, and it's Dean Jones' version. That's awesome. And then I was at the theater, and not all your events are going to be blockbusters. There was one time I'm showing a movie, and there's just one guy in there with me, and that was it. But that one guy brought 7 people to church over his course of being in St. Cloud. And I'd rather have one guy who does something than a full house and doesn't do something. And I'm so excited because at our church, the gospel gets shared from the pulpit every Sunday. Because our pastor doesn't know if it's this is the only time someone's in church or the only time they're tuning in online. He wants to make sure they hear the gospel. That's why I'm always so encouraged. Come out to church, because then they're going to get the gospel. And it also helps us. We hear it a lot, so then we can a false gospel will pop out right away. And so it's a double blessing. And then Ednal, he's from Haiti, he did really good talking to the people. It was like living in a sitcom when we'd have the kiosk there. It was so much fun, and it was so funny. This is Lou, he was a evolutionist, and they'd hang around because we'd have so much fun. We were always laughing. And that was what bothered the head atheist. It's like, you guys are always so happy. What's the deal? Well, it's the joy of the Lord. And then these people, just from the right to the left, the guy in the gray shirt, he's Daniel from Colombia. He's a Catholic. This is at our church. And then there's Kaushik from India. He's a Hindu. And then there's Eustacia from Hong Kong. I don't remember what she was. And then there's Matt, the guy in the light shirt. He's from Norway, and he's an atheist who brings all these people to church. So we're having fun, and even the atheists want to be part of it. And then next to him is Assis, and he's from Nepal, and he's a Christian. And most people in Nepal are Hindu. But he likes Christianity because we're all the same. We're all sinners in need of a Savior. In Hindu, you got the caste system. You got the Brahmins on top. You got the untouchables at the bottom. And he didn't like that. And so we just try to have fun. We have fun serving God and spreading the word. And we'd have campfires or go bowling, ping pong, and foosball. And this is my favorite, Pictionary. Who's played Pictionary before? Oh, boy, you guys don't know what you're missing. The ones who do, oh, my. It's my favorite game. Pizza and Pictionary. And what we did one time, on Saturday night, we would go to St. Cloud State and we would play Pictionary just out in the open. We didn't have to reserve a room or anything. We just went where the tables are and started playing Pictionary. And then the laughter would attract other students. And we did it Saturday nights. They had an option of not going to the bar, do something fun instead. And so we got to meet some students that way, which Lee from the Philippines, we met that way. But probably the most important thing we do at St. Cloud State is put our posters up in the middle of their posters. Because you got the drag brunch or the LGBTQ advocate power up series, and they have their posters around all the time. And so we have ours up there too. And it says, where does your path lead? And it says we just keep changing the messages. And the last time, they just stole both of them. What was the message on there? It was, can you think in class, or must you conform? They didn't like that one. And then, it used to be a student could check out the kiosk and we could proclaim the message that they wanted proclaimed. And we'd go there for Christmas, and when we make posters, if I headed at St. Cloud State, I'd always want to point them to Jesus. Not the Christmas tree or the Easter bunny. I always wanted to point them to Jesus and then try and put a Bible verse on there. But then they changed the rules where I can't be there unless a student's there, so I go out into the free speech zone, and this is my favorite time of year. I just love going to St. Cloud State in December, because then I bring my Bluetooth speaker and I play them Christmas carols. This is Christ the King, or God and sinners reconciled. And it's so edifying hearing those hymns or those Christmas carols over and over again. And people are walking by and it's like, hey, Merry Christmas, Jesus is the reason for the the season. Did you get your free gift that he bought and paid for with his blood so you can go to heaven? So I would talk to them like that, and it's just so much fun. I'm just celebrating a national holiday. What could be wrong with that? But there are people that do not say Merry Christmas, and that's why I'm there. You know, there was a psych major who was talking to me one time. It's like, what you doing? And I said, well, if you saw a blind person walking towards a cliff, would you warn them? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, that's what I see at St. Cloud State. I see blinded people walking towards a cliff, and they could end up in hell. And they can go there if they want to, but they're going to have to walk by me first. They're going to have to make a conscious decision to reject Jesus Christ. And I don't want them there, and Jesus doesn't want them there. But if they want to be there, that's their choice. But again, they'll have no excuse. It's like, I chose this. And this is my bike that I'll have. Jesus died for you on the front, and then one way, you know, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. So then people who come in and out of Atwood, they can see Jesus. I just want them to realize there's another perspective. And my wife and I were just biking around, and somebody goes, yeah, Jesus, you know, they saw that. And so then we talked to her for a little bit. Lisa was her name. But then they may not want Jesus, so I'll try and go after their belief system. So I'll have this, hey, did hydrogen and helium really turn into people? And a professor walked by and said, no, hydrogen and helium didn't turn into people. And I said, well, what did the Big Bang make? And he didn't say anything. And I said, it made hydrogen, helium, and a little bit of lithium. And he goes, yeah, and those exploded into stars and turned into the elements that made us today. And I said, prove it. Show us an experiment that that's what's happened. And now I'm doing this one. I got, love your enemies. You know, I get real nervous when people are banging the war drums, you know, and people are going after, they both rejected Jesus. They both need Jesus. And that's kind of how I come down on that. And then we had this one, Break Through the Lies of Evolution. This is Dr. Jerry Bergman. He's got 9 degrees and just phenomenal. And they stole this poster too. That bummed me out because that was one of my favorites. But it wasn't at St. Cloud State. It was at the University of Northwestern down in St. Paul, which is about an hour and a half away. But I was promoting it and trying to get students to go there. That's our regional creation speaker, because they're spending a few $100 every month to have a creationist come in and share the creation message. And you guys could do that right here, because you've got the Greater Houston Creation Association. They must have speakers coming in every month, and you can just piggyback on that. And so I would go to Northwestern, and the students didn't have any idea that it was happening there. You got these all-star creationists coming in, and they don't know about it. So I thought, well, we're going to have to start a club here too. And so I got a table, met the students, found the advisor, got the Constitution, got it approved, and April did a great job running it, and then she handed it off to another leader, and then COVID hit, and now we're starting at ground zero again. So before the talks, I'll go down and I'll eat lunch. You know, I'll have a table occasionally, and I'll eat lunch in their cafeteria. And then I'll tape a poster to my table, and that attracted the student, Logan. He didn't know about the talk, but he came to the talk, and now he's interested and excited about creation. So I'm just doing what I can. Yesterday I was at the airport, and I just happened to have a table where everybody's coming off the thing, and I had this flyer, and it said, Jesus, remember Jesus, and I put that up for one of the batches. And he goes, you should take that you should take that sign down. And in Minnesota, at the Mall of America, a guy got arrested or thrown out of the mall for having something about Jesus on his T-shirt. So Minnesota is not very tolerant of certain ideas. And nowadays, oh no, we won't even go into that. It's just off the deep end. But you guys have that club here. And I tried to get a club going in Liberty, down in Virginia. I was speaking there. I had somehow I got this table, and I got 55 students. When I have a table on campus, I want to let them know we're going to have these creation events, and I ask, would you like to know about when they happen? If they say yes, like, okay, put your email down here. And then they're putting down the email, and then then I always spell check it. I always write it underneath, because if I get one letter wrong, they'll never get the message. So I always spell check it. And then, hey, would you want to be part of the club? You know, it's a lot more fun in the game than watching the game. And if I find some of them, and at Liberty, it was the best day I'd ever had. 55 people gave me their emails. 7 or 8 of them wanted to be leaders. And Liberty, they pay people to come in to give convocations at 10 in the morning at Liberty. It's like, well, just have a creationist come in once a month. And then not only talk to the students, but have them talk the night before for the whole community. invite the pastors and the teachers, and there was some instructors at other places that were excited about what we were doing. And so it was all set up on a tee for the advisor to knock it out of the park. He had the students, he had the leaders, it'd be the simplest club to run, and he walked back into the dugout. He didn't even swing. He dropped the ball. So that club, which had it all in place, didn't get off the ground. So if anybody knows anybody from Liberty, or if you end up seeing this online and you're at Liberty, I think you've got a gold mine there. You could be a beacon of creation light for central Minnesota. And I think Houston could also, there should be a beacon of creation light here somewhere. And so then I went up to Brainerd, that's an hour north, and I met the students, got the advisor, and actually I found the advisor. He was at one of my talks. He taught at a community college, and I said, would you like to be an advisor for a club? And he said, sure. Because that's the hardest part, finding an advisor. And he said, sure. So then I went up there and met the students, got it all organized, and that's an hour away. At our club in St. Cloud State, it's a ministry arm of the church, so everything's got to be okayed by the pastor. These guys are an hour away, so they just did whatever they wanted. And what they wanted to do was do a Bible study right out in the middle of everybody. And I thought, good for you guys. They could have done it in a classroom, but they did it right in front of everybody. And I thought, good. Because when life hits the atheist, they aren't going to get any comfort from an atheist. You can get comfort from a Christian. And it's good for them to know who the Christians are. Another time I was in Pensacola, and I had a day between talks, so I went to the college. I love talking to college students. And so I parked and I went to security and I asked them, do I need a parking pass to be here? And she said, well, what are you doing here? And I said, I want to talk to the students. And she said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, the gospel. And she said, they don't want to hear it. And I said, we'll see about that. And she said, okay, you got to go up by that building and you can talk to them there. And so I went up to the building and I'm sitting on the picnic table with my feet on the bench, and I'm just offering tracts. You guys want some Bible verses on how to get to heaven? And then the security officer walks into the building, comes out with the college president, who tells me this isn't the free speech zone. You have to go up by that parking lot where there's a square about the size of your table. That's where you can be. And so I go, okay. So I go out there and I said, so this is where I can speak freely? And they said, yeah. I said, this is where free they said, yeah. And I said, well, it kind of makes me wonder about the rest of the campus. And she said, oh, I can speak freely there. I can share the gospel. And I said, can you do it in class? And she said, no. And I said, I can speak freely here. How could I get this, what would have to happen for me to speak freely inside that building? And she said, well, if a club invites you to speak, then you can speak. And I said, okay, well, could you introduce me to the advisor for the Christian club? And she said, absolutely. And I wish I could have seen the security officer's face, because she's trying to silence me like crazy, and it just backfired because God used it for good. So then she introduced me to the Christian advisor, who invited me to give a talk the next time I was in Florida, and that's what happened. They did a great job marketing. They had 4 or 5 classes there, 4 or 5 professors there. They gave me 40 minutes, and then they fed them Chick-fil-A sandwiches for free afterwards. And I asked the advisor, do you want me to share the gospel? And he said, that's why we're doing this. So I got up to say what they wanted to say, and then I could take the slings and arrows. Also, you can see it online. It's called Think Outside the Box. And then I was at St. Cloud State in the winter. This is spring, because in the winter the sidewalks are still frozen. But this is in the spring, and I was in there in January at the beginning of the semester, and I had a sign there, and it said, forgiveness and redemption. This offer expires when you do. Maybe today. And I'm just there, and my Bluetooth speaker, my speaker was dead, and so I was just there, and it's cold and it's foggy, and a woman walks by, and I just hand out a tract, and she takes it and takes 2 steps and says, is this a church? And I said, yeah. And she said, where is it? And I told her, and it's out of town a bit. And I said, do you need a ride? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, Carolyn will bring you. I bring the guys, Carolyn brings the girls. We don't have an appearance of evil. We don't get in a he said, she said situation. So that's a simple way to avoid it. And that's the same way with kids too. It's not only for their protection, it's for your protection. I always have 2 adults, when you're with the opposite sex. But she gets the girls, I get the guys. And there's Boomy. And I think she was from Nigeria, and she was our college. After April, Boomy was our president. And she did a great job. And then after she left, then her friend Elizabeth was our president. And that's one of the hardest things to do, is get people, after the advisors, finding the people who want to be trained to be the president. And just because I was out there, I didn't even say anything. I just held out a tract, and God was able to use that little bit. So little is much in the hands of Jesus. We just have to give God a little bit and see what he does with it. And when you're on campus, you're going to hear stuff like, hey, I don't believe in God. And if you have a lot of time, you ask them, well, without God, how do you determine right and wrong? And they'll say, well, the individual determines what's right and wrong. Well, I say, well, Jeffrey Dahmer, he decided it was okay to kill people and eat them. Well, what could be wrong with that? Well, it hurt people. You can't hurt people. And they said, so you must be against abortion then. Oh, no, it can't be. But there was one kid, or one student, and he said, you must be against abortion. He goes, no, not at all. And I said, well, by your own standard, it hurts somebody. It hurts the baby. And he goes, you're right, I'm against abortion. So, so usually that's only happened to me once. And then they'll say, well, it's legal to give abortions. And I said, well, it was legal to own slaves. The Supreme Court has been wrong before. And they'll say, well, society determines what's right or wrong. And I said, well, there's the society that decided it was okay to kill Jews by the millions. How could that be wrong? And after one of my talks in Atwood, I talked to an atheist for probably 2 hours until Atwood closed about that topic. Because they do not have a standard. You need something outside of us to determine right and wrong. And I heard Matt Walsh talking to Joe Rogan about marriage and about homosexual marriage. And what Matt should have done is said, he said, it's just basically his opinion against Joe's. Well, what's the deal? What we need to do is point people to the Bible. Well, God instituted marriage between a man and a woman. And then they'll say, well, I don't believe in God. Okay, and this is what you can say if you don't have much time. You ask them, well, how did life begin if there's no God? Because they can't explain it. This is their textbook. Somehow, despite the harsh environment, living organisms appeared. Somehow. And that's the problem with our textbooks. We had fuzzy words like that, propping up a belief system of the past that never happened. And then the other thing you'll hear is, well, I believe in science. Okay, now you need to define the terms. Science is observation and testing. And that's not a Big Bang or evolution. You also have to, and I said, I was having this conversation when we agreed that, science is observable, testable, repeatable, scientific method type of science. And I said, well, evolution's none of that. Neither is the Big Bang. And he said, sure it is. And I said, okay, what's your best evidence for evolution? And he said, moths. You get light moths and dark, they turn into dark moths. And I said, well, what did you start with? And they said, a moth. What'd you end up with? A moth. And I said, that's not evolution, that's just variation within a kind. And then you're going to hear him say, well, there are no absolutes. So then you say, are you absolutely sure? Yeah, I'm absolute. Well, that sounds like an absolute. There is no truth. Well, is that true? And, yeah, it's true. Well, apparently there's truth. Truth is unknowable. Well, how do you know that? It's all self-refuting statements. Only your 5 senses provide real knowledge. Okay, well, which sense told you that? Did you smell it? Did you taste it? Did you feel it? And then only the physical realm is real. Well, that statement is immaterial. It's not physical. So there is something besides, and that's the big problem, information. Where do you get information from? It always comes from a mind. And our DNA is full of information, brilliantly coded. And they're messing with our DNA, and they have no idea what the side effects are going to be. And we see good information, our DNA, going bad with mutations. We don't see it getting better. So the question is, where did it come from? Okay, and then one time a student said, well, do you believe in God or science? And I said, I believe in both, because the Bible and science are hand in glove. But the Bible and evolution bang heads, because evolution is not science. And another way to reach them, and I really like this one, is to have a marker board. Encourage participation. This is for Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for? And they'd write it down. And then I say, who are you thanking? I want them to point to God. And then I did this. I really love this question. I've done this at several colleges. How did we get here? Creation in 6 days, evolution over millions of years, intelligent design, or don't know? And this is St. Cloud State. And I figured it was going to be a landslide for evolution, but it wasn't. Evolution won, but it wasn't by much. And I did it at a community college, and a student stroked underneath creation, and I asked him, why'd you put it there? If they stroke under evolution, I'd say, okay, how did life begin? Get him down that path. But he stroked under creation, and I asked him, why did you put it there? And he said, well, that's where everybody else was putting it. And creation actually won. And so I'd heard about this concept where take any topic out there, any issue, there's 15 to 20% that you're not going to change their mind. But the middle 60 to 70% will go whichever is easiest. So let's make it easy to go to the Creator. Did this in Penn State Altoona campus out in Pennsylvania. Did it at the University of Illinois Chicago. I didn't have the science, so I just went around and talked to people. And it was closer than you would expect, 18 to 10. But 12 people didn't know, and if we can get them on our side. And then also, how old is the Earth? That's when we were doing our Creation Science 103, how the age of the Earth. And if you're interested on what the Bible says on how do you get up to roughly 6,000 years, go into Creation Science 103 on our page, because there's a framework. We get Bible verses to Nebuchadnezzar, and then we jump to the secular timeline instead of making a big jump to Jesus. Well, this is the event that I talked about before, and I had that, and about the dinosaurs, and it's very confusing. 81 to 51, thought millions of years, mainly a Christian audience. And I did it at Bethel, which is a Christian college in Minnesota. And millions of years was almost 3 times more than thousands, so we're doing a really poor job. And I'm going to be speaking at the College of Biblical Studies, and we're going to help them understand why that's a problem. And then I go to St. Cloud State. You know, I've got this fold-up 6-foot table, and I'll bring a camping chair, and I'll ask things, and do professors allow diversity of thought? And then this day, what are you, A, mutated animal, or B, made in God's image? You know, and it's the end. And there was a professor that walked by, and we'd locked horns before, and I asked, so are you a mutated animal or made in God's image? And she said, I find that offensive. And I said, you can take it however you want, but I think it's offensive that you take my tax dollars to teach kids that they're mutated animals. And she said, well, I don't teach them that. And I said, what do you teach? And she said, sociology or something like that. And I said, well, you probably know some biologists. Let's both of us go knock on their door and tell them to stop it. And as I'm saying that, a student, and I'm just sitting in my camp chair, and the student comes up to me and says, thank you for doing God's work. And she just hit the ceiling. She just came unglued. He's not doing God's work. I went to a Christian college. I go to church on Sunday, and I've got 100% attendance in Sunday school. And I told this to my wife, and my wife said, man, it sounds like a Pharisee. And so then security ended up coming, and they said I was saying stuff that people didn't like. But we had a conversation about what's free speech. And so then the next day, the question was, what's in the First Amendment? Free speech is for speech you disagree with, not for speech you do agree with. And we need to use these rights, or we're going to lose them. And let's see, real quickly, we'll jump to the end. Every fair should have a creation booth. It is so much fun. How did life begin? And just have a lot of fun. Giving people another perspective, because they need to see both sides if they want to think, and that's not happening. And then do creation vacations. Get up to Glen Rose, Texas, and go to the Creation Evidence Museum. That's what changed my life. To a certain extent, I saw dinosaur footprints with human footprints. And Carl Baugh couldn't sleep for 4 nights after he saw that, because he was an old earther. And then once you're up there, you can see Dinosaur Valley State Park. And I came out of this thing, and I was just so upset. Why do I got to go to Texas to learn this? You know, why isn't this common knowledge? And if you ever get that feeling, that's probably God tapping you on the shoulder. You know, maybe it's not creation, maybe it's abortion, maybe it's homelessness, maybe it's the perversion they're teaching in school. What just irritates you? And then get involved using your gifts to proclaim God. And then real quickly, I encourage you to be bold. This isn't photoshopped. I just happened to have my camera as my wife and I went to a walk. Heaven or hell, it's your choice. Jesus is the way. Be bold and gracious. I have to work on the graciousness, all right? And you can see this stuff. If you go into my YouTube channel, just type in bold, and a lot of these things are going to come up. Everybody should listen to Phil Stringer's. I interviewed him for an hour. If I could do one podcast, it was going to be him, because he stood up to the government 3 times when they were the state was trying to regulate the Christian schools or the churches or the Christian colleges, and he stood up to them, and his stories are amazing. And then there's Eric Hovind. This is when they were, the very first atheist monument on public land was being unveiled there. So he's surrounded with atheists. He gets up and stands on the monument and preaches the gospel. That's bold. But then there's Jay Seegert, who's really good with the soft answer, turning away wrath and befriending these atheists. And I've got to learn to work on that. So, and again, you can see all that stuff. And with that, I don't want to keep you any longer. There's my contact information. I do have cards on the table up there. I'll put them back at the door, so feel free to grab them. My email's there, so if you have any questions, that's what I want to do. I want to get a vast number of people to understand that we've been misled by our education system, and we don't like it. And we want we want an intellectual revolution here, not just a dogma rammed down people's throat.